4020.
So the only Challenge Cup tie we haven't mentioned yet is the one that everyone seemed to enjoy, especially those who don't like Wigan and wanted to see them take down a peg or two. And let's start by saying, right, what has driven the change at Hull? It must be a combination of everything, because as we know, in the past, when Hull have been losing a game against the likes of Wigan, that ends up 70 points to 6 or whatever. Under multiple coaches and multiple players. But here we've got a new CEO, a new owner, new coach, new players. And now they don't give up. And Lewis Martin's now the folk hero of West Hull.
I think the amazing thing about that game is that Hull were 16-0 down after 16 minutes. And when Wigan gets 16-0 up against virtually any team, you probably wouldn't get odds from the bookies that opposition would come back and beat them. So that's a measure of how phenomenal a performance it was. So let's not look at it from the Wigan point of view at the moment, but the whole one. In answer to your question, if there was one single answer, every team would know what it was, and you have to get the various elements right. And clearly, John Cartwright has inculcated something in pre-season where this group of players want to play for each other. I think part of that is down to almost writing off last year. And I think they knew that things had to change. So with the benefit of the hindsight of now looking back at what happened last year, a lot of players were thrown into that environment to see if they could sink or swim. Some of them sunk. The ones that swam and are now a vital part of what happened on Saturday night. So the likes of Lewis Martin, who I think we identified on the show as being, even last year in the dire straits that they were in, to be an outstanding talent. Harvey Barron, Logan Moy, those three stood out. And because of the experience that they had last year and what they were put through and the fact that they survived that, you've now added to them a level of protection with the kind of player you've bought in Rapana and Asiata, who are not there long term. They're there to change things around. I think Amir Burra has been a revelation. I wasn't sure how they were going to replace Danny Houghton, and in fact, going back to the James Roby thing, you can't replace that. So how are you going to be different? How are you going to get somebody that's going to do the same amount of work but almost have a little bit more energy because they're younger? How are you going to replace the irreplaceable? And I'm not sure he has yet, because we're only talking 5 or 6 weeks. But yes, he was playing against the club that released him, so he had an added incentive. But he has been, over the last 2 or 3 weeks that I've seen him, absolutely outstanding. The big thing for me is Aidan Caesar, because you have to have a general. And again, if we were going to pick the Super League Player of the Month, which was given to Jai Field, and the curse of that is what we'll talk about for Wigan in a minute, I'd have given it to Caesar, because I think you have to have an architect.
So he's the Player of the Month and Mike McMeekin's the Man of Steel. Is that where we've got?
If we were having the voting now,
which we don't have a vote on.
But the thing about Aidan Caesar is, people say, "Oh, he was rubbish at his previous." Yeah. He was really good at Leeds. In 2022, Leeds got to the grand final. Aidan Caesar was the architect of that. He just couldn't stay on the field enough and missed the grand final because of an HIA. He didn't play as often as Leeds would have wanted him to play. Otherwise, you would have seen the kind of influence that he's got at Hull at the moment at Leeds. But the signs of it were there. I think he has been absolutely outstanding for them. You have to have somebody in the middle of the field that understands everything the coach wants and will be the direct representative on it. And he is. And
of course, here's the massive caveat, proviso and everything. 6 weeks, 7 weeks, or whatever it was into Darryl Powell's reign at Warrington, they were on. They were going to win Super League.
Catalan last year had won 7 out of 8.
We're not saying Hull are going to win Super League or anything, but you can see things have changed. Things have definitely... Again, because they would have lost that game last year.
The cup draw is now interesting, because you don't need to win that many games to get to Wembley. Now, if Hull did or didn't make the playoffs, but got to Wembley, already the season is a success. So whether they will or whether they won't, they'll feel, having knocked out the cup holders, that they've every right to be considered a chance.
It's the recruitment of a strong coach, says Paul, and some experienced leaders that have led to a marked improvement in the attitude on the field for us. Shows the improvement that in all competitions we've already won more than in all of 2024.
I'm not sure it's attitude. I think it's professionalism. I think you've got people in there that know what it takes to be a winner. So, Asiata won a cup with Lee. Hardacre, multiple winner. I think they know what Tom Briscoe, again, it won't get any credit, but in training, he will be the one that says, if you really want to win things, this is what we've got to do. I think the fact that Gareth Ellis has a settled role now behind the scenes, that's important.
He was a winner. He was quite good.
And
he was a professional.
He can talk about culture, but if you haven't got the right people there and the right structure, but it looks like they have now. It's early, so I don't think even the Hull fans will revel in everything they're doing, but they're not going to get carried away at the moment. But the indications are that the ingredients you need to make that change are there. It's happened a lot quicker than anybody could have thought of. But the performance at Wigan was revelatory. We shouldn't downgrade that in any way whatsoever.
When did they appoint Cartwright, and who made that decision?
I think it was Richie Myler. I think that was one of the first things that he did. He went through I'm told that there were 3 candidates, and Cartwright was deemed to be what they were looking for. What I liked about Cartwright the week before was that when he was up in the stand, he's got no communication that's obvious with the people down. It's almost like, trust. I've given you my message, you know what I need you to do, I'm going to watch it so that when I come down at half time I might tweak 1 or 2 things or point a few things out, but I'm not going to sit there constantly throwing messages at you, because we know what we're doing. And I think if you give that to your team, you're sort of halfway there. Clearly, I think he's a hard taskmaster. He's given them a really tough pre-season. I think he's asked them to buy in or ship out, and I think those that are bought in are doing the job for him, and those that were told to ship out if they didn't want to be there want to be there, so they now know what they've got to do. It was always meant to be a bridging fix to go from where they were last year to sustained success, and the mixture is right at the moment. It will still take some work to make it sustainable, but they couldn't be on a better track at the moment.
So for any recent former players who are about to become CEOs anyway, just have a look at what Richie's done at Hull. It's working at the minute.
I think it's a combination as well of new investors coming in.
That's quite important.
Which has allowed him to buy some of the players that he wants. And I think what, again, it's showing, with the greatest respect to Adam Pearson, is that they went 3 or 4 years probably not being able to invest in the way that they are doing at the moment. And that wasn't buying a group that was going to be cohesive and come together. It was just getting what you could within the budget that you had to work with. I think that there's now Hull is still in the market for players. I wouldn't be surprised if at least one Salford player ends up at Hull. They're in the market. They're going to fight for every player. And the more they play like they did on Saturday night, the more players are going to want to sign for them.
So we've praised Hull enough now, so let's kick Wigan, because obviously it's either one team's good, one team bad. That's how it works. But Wigan, they don't lose from that position. And Matt Peake did say at the start of the season, they're not going to win everything.
No.
And they're not going to win everything.
And he did say they're not going to win every competition. I don't think he meant we're going to get knocked out of the Challenge Cup at this stage.
By 16-0. But is this a hangover from Vegas?
No.
Is it or what is it then? Just Hull were better on the day and had more about them in that second half. Even without John Asiati, he went off the sin bin. Did they score 2 tries in that period? Or one try? They didn't concede.
They scored one. No, they didn't. I think the one element to mention was Jai Field going off, or Jay. I don't know which he prefers. When Wigan were vulnerable last year, Field and French were out injured.
Yeah.
And it was almost as if he's gone off. We've got to now move Bevan back to fullback, which takes that magic a little bit further away from the action. And they didn't adjust very well. there were some players that made uncharacteristic errors. Even the last play of the game, with the hooter's gone, you think, well, we're going to have got some players that if you can get them on the ball and in space, Jake Wardle or Liam Marshall kicked. It was an innocuous kick into a whole player and the game finished. And you just think that's not Wigan-like. So I think Field going off is not a reason or an excuse, but it seemed to change the way they approached the game. They became innately conservative. They weren't doing... Hull played rugby throughout. You know, they must have realised that their best tactic was going to be moving the ball and, you know, make Wigan work. What they managed to do was negate the impact of people like Nasemba, who was still very influential, but couldn't really be doing it on his own. No. Cade Ellis went off. He's very important to them as well. It's not just Wigan's injuries. I think every time you mention why Wigan lost, you're almost detracting from why Hull won. Yeah. Hull was sensational. It really was edge of the armchair stuff. It was a thrilling cup tie. The greatest moment of that was Lewis Martin taking on Bevan French and beating him on the outside. That was where Hull were. Confident, brave, willing to risk stuff. Wigan weren't. They were conservative. They went back in their shells. We've almost won this game. Our star guy's gone off. Let's step back a little bit, and it Hull punished them.
I mean, the conversion miss wasn't crucial in the end, of course, but that could have knocked them as well. But Martin scored two similar tries as well. It was strange. Andy says, I think Warrington and Wigan are still feeling the effects of Vegas. Paul,
I'd like to say that, but that didn't happen to some of the NRL teams that were in Vegas.
Well, they're like professionals and everything. So
New Zealand Warriors did not show the after effects of Vegas this week when they beat Manly.
Were they in the pub afterwards? Was their coaching that? Well, no, actually, no. Let's move on.
Don't mention the New Zealand Warriors coach.
Paul says, Briscoe and Rapana will be great in the development of Martin, May and Barron. Will take us time, as you say, but for the first time in a few years, we have seen positives ahead, but still a lot to do. That's all you need. It's little signs.
But I think the one thing, Brian Noble talks a little bit about Hull in his column and how they've been the story of the season. And one of the things that's the most impressive of any is that having come off particularly last season, where if you'd been a season ticket holder at Hull, you'd almost be asking for a proportion of your money back. They've won the crowd back inside 5 weeks. Yeah. That is sensational. You know, Hull are not the most demanding of crowds. They just want to see that the guys are putting it in. You know, they're not expectant of winning a trophy. They want their team to be representative of what they are. And to do that within such a short space of the 2025 season and get that crowd back on board is fantastic. It really is. And, you know, when the derby comes up at Easter, it's going to be rocking.
Ian says, the BBC were ridiculed for picking that game. Just goes to show. I mean, what kind of idiot would come on a podcast and say, why are they showing that game?
It's true. Well, I tweeted that afterwards, that maybe they actually got it right.
Yeah, got it completely wrong. Based on the fact that the game a few weeks ago was completely different. And what a turnaround from that for both sides.
Yeah,
to do it away from home for Hull.
That also is a measure of what Hull learned. You know, when John Cartwright was interviewed before the game about, you know, what do you expect, bearing in mind that, you know, you suffered a 40-point defeat at home two weeks ago, he basically said, we learned that Wigan were a really good team. I like that. I think he doesn't say a lot, but what he says gives you the impression that he's changing the mentality in that dressing room.
I'm wrong sometimes. Sometimes I'm right, but mainly wrong.